Fantastic, Jerry. Well, that was a great honor and pleasure and amazing. And it's so great to actually have you here after so many years of just loving every record that you played on. But what I want to ask about you, because, I mean, everybody knows your history. Your history is the history of music.
Oh, they know my professional history, yes. My recorded history, they know that.
Yes, they know that. But here's what I want to know. Because I read about your time growing up, starting on double bass, and playing a lot of, as is obvious, jazz. And it's very interesting that a lot of the great players came from jazz. A lot of the great people we think of as R&B or soul or funk players, they came from jazz.
Yeah.
There's no question of that. So, and you can hear it in their playing. Now, the public is kind of surprised to hear that. You and I are not surprised, because obviously in order to play funk the way you play funk, you have to have had quite a deep musical background. And you particularly, you had so many different styles of music growing up, and you were able to actually play with people in all those different styles. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Wow, that's a mouthful there.
Wasn't it? Yeah. You got to get me to shut up sometimes.
Okay, no. For me, your part is good. I started on the stage at the age of 5 as a tap dancer with Mary Bruce. And that was my first experience with the stage. And I had a lot of other experiences in life that were like accidents. I had a lot of traumatic brain injuries as a child growing up.
Oh, wow.
So I was very withdrawn, and I really didn't want to do anything. And after a car accident, spent 2 weeks in the hospital. I was home, and I heard the music I've been listening to for the last, I was 10 years old at this point. And for some reason, the bass all of a sudden came to me as something that I could actually do in life. And then before that, I had no indication of anything. I didn't want to be a fireman, a policeman, anything that most of the kids grow up and aspire to.
Sure.
I had no, direction, no passion for anything. But when I heard Paul Chambers playing a song that I hadn't heard before after this accident, it sounded differently. The bass stood out. 'Cause I've been hearing him playing with Miles and other stuff.
Sure.
And I said, I want to do that. And that was it for me.
Do you remember what the tune was that you
It was one of those songs, it was on the Around Midnight album, because it's the only album my sister had.
Right.
And one of those songs, I don't remember which one.
Right.
But it stood out to me as something I wanted to do. And I wasn't able to start at that particular point. I had to wait till I got to junior high school. And I got a bass and a teacher.
Right.
And went to the music program and auditioned for the All Bronx Junior High School Orchestra.
Okay.
And I became the principal bassist of that. There's only 3 of us, but I was the top dog in that level.
Woof.
And then I met Eddie Gomez.
Wow. That'll do it.
And realized I had a lot more work to do. He was a few years older than me. One of the musicians I had met at the All Bronx conference was his brother, Lorenzo Hall. He plays drums. And so he would bring the Newport Youth Band, which Harry was a part of, to his church. We have a jam session, basically. So I met Eddie and Alan Rubin and the drummer, Larry Rosen, all the other cats, Andy Masala, the whole band, Benny Jacobs, Nat Pavone, and Michael Benny, the piano player.
Right, fantastic.
Who I worked with later, 20 years later.
Right.
So that was my start. And then I started working professionally. We did an album at the junior high school level that summer, but you couldn't hear the bass that well. You couldn't hardly hear, and all the work we had put in, I was really upset.
Of course.
So I started to work harder. And it paid off because I was playing at the boys club with a bunch of kids, and it was an open rehearsal space. And some men had heard me playing, and when we took a break, they approached me in the hall to join the band. I said, well, sounds good to me, but you got to ask my mother. I'm only 12 years old.
Quite right.
So they took me home, and I was beginning my professional career.
Right, yeah.
That's where I started.
Right. And the thing was that having played all that quite sophisticated music from then on the double bass, what was the thing that turned you on to the electric bass?
The fact that the people I started at one point, I was playing with a bunch of kids a little bit older than me, but they tried to do the Miles Davis thing and be disrespectful to the audience. They took that part of Miles' music and his demeanor.
Right.
And they decided they wanted to do things like that. Somebody come up and ask to play a tune, and they'd take the money from them and they'd play something else. They'd even think about it, we'd play something else. And that kind of turned me off. Mm-hmm. And all the time I had grown up playing professionally, doing gigs. The first band was Smile and Henry and the Rhythm Makers. And we do gigs, there'd be 5 or 6 bands on the gig. There'd be our band, we were all the variety band. Then they have a calypso band, a Latin band, a jazz band,
right.
a rhythm and blues band, and a featured vocalist band. Yeah. So you have all this music going around, and a lot of them had the electric bass in the rhythm section. And they seem to be having a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So when I was playing with these other kids, I said, this ain't it for me. I'm going to try playing with the band that's having some fun.
Right.
So I went to Bermuda with Danny Burgess, and I came back. I made up my mind to come back and buy an electric setup.
Right.
And that's what I did. And I worked on it for a while, and my first gig, I could hardly play it. After working on it,
right.
I thought I had it. Fortunately, with 3 bands on the gig, so I was able to play an upright bass in the rhythm and blues band.
Right. Focus in a little bit more on what I'm trying to find out is When you first started getting into the electric bass, what were the kind of grooves that you were playing then that you said, wow, this is kind of thing because I can play this that I couldn't play on that, but now I'm playing this thing and it's called a groove, and wow. What were some of the tunes you were playing at that time when you first started getting into it?
Well, we were playing mostly blues, but when I was playing upright, I was playing a lot of Latin.
Right,
I played
right.
with Pooch from the Latin Soul Brothers. I played with Willie Bobo.
Right, exactly.
Whoever, when the phone rang, I just answered. I just came out and played.
And I can hear a lot of Latin in your playing.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
it's just underneath. It's
Oh,
that
yeah.
undercurrent of Latin music.
Always.
Yeah.
It's always. I think of a Latin because Latin is dance music.
Yes.
You think about people dancing other than swing.
Yeah.
You know, there's Latin.
Yeah.
So I naturally go to that. That's my backup. Basically, everything I hear is like dance. You know, being a tap dancer, so I'm thinking rhythmically anyway.
Right.
It's just natural for me to think about the rhythm first,
Right.
and then the notes. And I couldn't really hear that well with all those, TBIs I had. So
Yeah.
my hearing was always had a crushed cochlea
Yeah.
for the longest time. And I just never couldn't. You discount things. You just live with what you work with what you got.
Right, absolutely.
What you got, you work with.
Sure,
The fact that I
yes.
couldn't hear well.
Yes.
I wanted to play. To really develop it to where I was really comfortable all the time.
Yeah.
But I knew I had something to say. I had something to deliver.
Right.
And at one point, I was listening to the radio and I heard something. I said, man, they're not utilizing this instrument, which I just started playing. They're not getting the full capability of it out.
right.
That motivated me to say to myself, I'm going to show them how to play.
Right.
That was my drive at that particular. I would tell myself that for 1 second,
Yeah.
and then I went about my business.
Right.
And I must have been about 17 at this particular point. No, maybe 8. No, I was older than that. I was 18
Right.
when I picked up the electric bass. I played the upright for 6 years. So that put me at 17, 18. And most of the stuff I played was coming from wherever I heard.
Yeah.
I have my interpretation of it.
And then the music that you were playing from then on, what was the first record that you did or the first band that you were with that you thought, this is the thing, now I got it?
Well, it's funny having Now I Got It.
Well,
That's funny thing is I always knew I had it. That's the thing.
no, but I mean, now I found it on this
But it didn't matter what I was playing. I
Yeah,
always knew
yeah.
I always felt that I had it. Whether I was playing upright bass
Right.
or electric bass, I knew I
Yeah.
had the right note for the right time and the right
Right,
groove.
right.
So it wasn't about discovering, it was about having the opportunity to play it.
Right.
And to hear it played back through the headphones on the record and to hear it on the radio. That's when I recognized the fact that, oh yeah, it's working.
Yeah.
And then when I heard other people playing and sounded like me, years later, I said, okay, job well done.
Yes.
So, but after that, there was no motivation to really play anymore, in a sense. So I had to only drive myself to this, play for my own enjoyment,
Right.
and to make the music sound even better beyond what I had originally imagined. I had done my first job.
Right.
The second job is to stay employed and to have fun and
Sure.
to take as good as I can. I get to the level where I could play where I was satisfied.
Right, sure.
And I always knew that because of the limitations I had growing up, I could never be the best. I knew that from day one. But I said I might be among the best.
So wrong.
I think I could be among the best. But I never could be the best. When you grow up with somebody like Eddie Gomez,
Well-
John Hart, and watching the other guys who were older play, and then the abilities they had, the hearing ability, the sophisticated hearing, and the things, I said that it's going to be a long time before you could be able to do that.
Now, you could already read because you'd
That was my
done-
strong point.
You did all that. So did you get hired for a lot of reading gigs
Oh, yeah.
in the beginning?
Yeah.
In those days? I mean, that was, and you talk about being in big bands and I guess you did radio and TV.
We
things,
played
but-
gigs, coming up, we played gigs much like the Newport Youth Band. Alfie Wade had a band called the Mixed Birds. And in that band was Richard Dubin, who you might know him from out here. Barry Altschul, drummer.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Frank Mitchell, who played with Art Blakey. A lot of other players that came out of the band.
Yeah.
From the neighborhood kids that they came together to play. So it was always around great musicians.
So I guess you got a lot of gigs because of your reading ability that gave you an entree to other things.
Yeah, I got to go out with Mercer Ellington, Duke's son.
Fantastic.
I mean, a lot of the things were happening in terms of my ability to read. I realized that.
Yes.
And when I started doing session work, the demo sessions, there wasn't that much music about your ideas you come up with.
Right.
So it gave me the freedom to be able to read a chart, but still be able to improvise and create something at the same time.
Exactly. And would you say that most of jumping ahead a little bit to the Muscle Shoals days, because you were playing with such great players who were each one of them very creative. Mm-hmm. I'd love to know the typical session. You'd walk into a session with those guys. What kind of went on? What was the first thing that happened? Did somebody hand out a chord sheet or something, or did people just say, "Here's my song, I'm going to play it"? How did it work out?
A little bit of everything. Sometimes they sing something in your ear on a demo session. The higher echelon sessions, there'd be a chart, there'd be arrangers, the guitar would be there, Harvest Art, Don Sebeski, you name it, the local cats who were like, arranging in New York at that particular time. They were what's the other cat's name? I forget his name. But he would take my music, I'd do it in a session 1 week, and then put it in another key, have me play the same line or another song with the music I played last week on a different key. Right. I said, I ain't having this, At that point, I would revolt and just do my own thing.
Absolutely. And you also talked about your work as an arranger. Now, sometimes I suppose you'd walk into the session and they'd say, okay, Jerry, this is the song. What do you think we should do about it?
That didn't happen too often, but what did happen was J.J. Jackson, he hired me as an arranger, not to play the bass. He liked my bass playing so much. He said, well, if you can do that so much, how about you arrange the song for me? And I did. I went home, wrote out all the parts, the bass part, the drum part, the sax parts, the whole 9 yards. Don't remember the name of the session anymore. But that was one of my first major sessions, actually. And I was as an arranger. But then I started doing my first so-called production session was with Nina Simone. Right. I recorded her, and this is like my first year playing the electric bass. So it's been like chronologically, I guess it's hard to remember everything in order. Sure. That's why I wrote my book a couple of years ago. Yes. And I have, working on getting that out. And it's more... and
the book is called...
I'm That Guy.
I'm That Guy, and he is that guy.
It kind of chronicles my personal life more than my professional life. That I briefly touched on here with my traumatic brain injuries as a child. And how it affected my my total life completely. I mean, to this day, people suffer from whiplash, and they have concussions, and they get into a fog, and they have to, it kind of explains why I was so withdrawn as a child, why I didn't want to do anything until I heard the bass after my car accident, where I was a pretty big one. I was out for 2 weeks, I don't even remember it. My sister told me what happened, basically. So my thing is like, you got to work with what you got and have a passion. Certainly. A passion for it. You need passion, you need compassion, which I had very little of. It was about, me playing. I had not so much mental fortitude. I had a lot of physical endurance. I had a lot of physical endurance. And those are the things that I wrote on, my physical endurance and my passion. Those are the two elements that I have, locked on. Later on, I learned to develop compassion. I learned to develop mental fortitude. But it takes time, and like you said, you don't do this in 5 minutes. No, you certainly don't. You play like from playing the electric arco on the upright bass, holding long notes. How slow can you play? How long can you hold that note? A wind player, you playing whole notes, blow for long tones. And this way you get your power from. So I had all that going from, that was I had a good foundation physically. And you've worked with so many different bands and so many different musicians. Of course, I've always been fascinated by that chemistry that you had with the King Curtis Band, with Cornell Dupree. And I want you to talk a little bit about how each one of those musicians, playing with Bernard Purdie, for instance, you have a really amazing sense of where one is and where the center of the beat is. And when I hear you playing with one drummer, you find exactly where his thing is instantly. And tell me a little bit about the way you think of that, especially, I guess, as a bass player, the drummer is really important. Well, it was funny. I have to go back to my jazz training. experience, because that's where it comes from, being able to recognize where things have to be different and to make things different, and to not necessarily lock with the drummer,
yes.
but to play a part. I'm used to playing parts.
Yes.
And when I joined King Curtis's band, he taught me. He said, "Slow down. Let's play one line, not 15.
Right.
You have to make up your mind what you're going to play."
Yes.
Basically, he didn't say it verbally, but I realized from his example.
Right.
He told me, I learned the art of doing that, and said, "Okay, it doesn't have to be." I was making the job harder than it had to be.
Right. Sure.
And he recognized that. And I'm beginning to recognize it even now. I mean, I hear things like sophisticated, but I have to bring it back to like, how few notes can you play at this point and
Yes.
still make it happen?
Very
as opposed
true.
to playing a lot of notes.
Yes.
So my thing now at this particular point is how little can I play and still be effective?
That's right.
In fact, that's one of the techniques I would use going in the studio, playing 3 or 4 days a week. I mean, a day, week after week, you get kind of drained on in terms of approach.
Right.
Knowing I had limited capabilities, I had to figure out an approach that I'd be comfortable in. So some days I say, okay, you're going to play as few notes as possible, and then the next day I play as many notes as possible and make it work.
Yes.
First, it had to work.
Yes,
Now, I wouldn't
yes.
just do it arbitrarily.
Yeah.
It had to make sense for me to do it.
Yeah.
And that would be my approach.
What you're talking about reminds me a lot of what Miles Davis said, that he knew that he didn't have the technique of somebody like, I guess, Clifford
Dizzy.
Brown or Dizzy or something. But he had an idea. And he said, I figured out a way to say what I wanted to say with my capabilities and still make it strong and still make it. And I often say to my arranging students, I say, okay, now I want you to take everything away from the arrangement that you can possibly take and still make it your arrangement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I want you to take note of what you took away. Because what you took away was not necessary, but that was. Mm-hmm. So keep note of that for the next arrangement. Then I want you to write another arrangement, remembering that. So that's kind of what we all did in the studios when we were coming up. We're thinking, what can we do, and how should we do it? And you learn. It's sort of self-training.
It is, because you'll never know everything. There's always something else to learn.
Yes.
I ran into Hank Jones.
Hank Jones. And
he was about 88 at the time. This is about, before I left New York, about 2006, 2007. I went to a session with Richard Davis was there, and Ralph McDonald, and Hank said, I'm still trying to get it together.
Right.
Okay? And here's a man who, historically, I mean, this is one of the greatest piano players ever, and he's still working on getting it together.
Right.
So it's a lifelong thing. There's always something else to learn, and having the tools in which to learn it is the most important thing.
And the other thing that reminds me of, because we were talking about Buddhism earlier, there's a place which is in Japan, in Kyoto. There's a garden. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's one of those Buddhist sand gardens. Oh. And in the garden, there are, I don't remember, I think it's 16 rocks. Of different sizes all over this. There's a walkway around it that they built, and you can walk around 3 sides of it. Two sides of it. You can walk all this way. And the monk came out, and he was whispering in my ear, and he said, there are 16 stones here. And I said, great. And he says, count them. And I said, I only count 13. And he said, okay, now go over here. Oh, now I only count 12. So the garden had been designed so that you could never see all the stones. And it was to teach people that you can never know everything.
That's great.
I thought you'd enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's just what you were talking about.
That's cool.
Yeah. When I hear you play with different drummers, I notice that you play differently, and you manage to sync beautifully with whatever person it is, but they're different personalities. So what is it that goes on in your mind when you walk in the studio and you say, oh, that's Bernard Purdy over there. I know that I'm going to play this way, but whereas another drummer, you'll say, I know he plays slightly behind the beat, or do you have that kind of thought? Yeah,
but that's very deep. Nobody's really, I'm glad I have an opportunity to say what I'm going to say, basically. I really listen to the song. I don't listen to individual instruments. That's like the last thing I think of.
Okay.
I listen to get the title of the song. I listen to the singer's phrasing or the lead player's phrasing, and I'm really there to support them. Mm-hmm. And everything else is part of the equation. We're all of the same mind, I would think, trying to support the singer. So everybody gives their version of support, mm-hmm. and at some point we have to come together or either lock in or just find our parts so we don't get in the way of each other.
Right.
So, and depending upon who it is, there's a certain expectation. Like with Bernard, I play something and he copy it. I said, oh, no, we don't want to do this after this song. So I set him up to copy my thing, and when the red light would come on, I play something different. That's how I dealt with Bernard.
Great.
With Herb Lavelle, he was my favorite drummer. I could play anything. He'd play his thing, I'd play my thing, and we hear it, we listen to the song, and we come together within the song. Mm-hmm. Bernard basically plays what Bernard plays, and that's basically it. So I would play in and out of what Bernard was doing, basically. Depending upon the song, I can't say for everything.
Sure, of course.
But it's always about the song first, right. And everything else is going to kind of fall in naturally. Uh-huh. That's always been my approach. Song title, what it means.
Yes. And
the sound of it. How do you want to express it? The tempo,
right.
The groove,
right.
All these things, and then I find something that's going to support it, whether it's going to be on the beat or behind the beat. It might require it before the beat.
Yes.
I kind of look at it that way. Whatever it's required, energy, it happens. Like a lot of things I play that require a lot of, for instance, I recorded People Gotta Be Free with the Rascals.
Right.
That was Aretha Franklin. He was the arranger. He called me for the session.
Right.
And that was very loose, and I was able to play freely.
Uh-huh.
The Bugatti brothers.
Oh, right.
One played drums, Eddie, and the other one was the singer. Eddie and, I forget the drummer's name. And Felix, and the guitar player, I forget his name also. But it's all in the history. But those are very free and loose sessions.
Right.
And I was able to take a chart, basically, and read the chart,
mm-hmm.
a chord chart,
right.
and then make something out of it.
Sure.
In one or two takes, basically.
Yeah.
And that was an example of a free session.
Yes.
That was orchestrated, but yet we've had freedom to create. And most of my sessions were like that, basically. Once they found that I could create pretty quickly, they stopped writing out parts for me.
Absolutely. A record, of course. I think the first time I ever said, wait a minute, who's playing bass on this track was Think.
Oh.
And it was you. And so now that is a really hip part, and it's kind of the basis of so much soul and funk and boogaloo and whatever. Now, when you walked into that session, what was written out for you? Anything?
I have a whole paragraph chapter in my book just about that song.
Okay.
That's when I met Aretha, and that's when I had been working for Dre Wexler.
Right.
Before that, and he told me to come to the session. He says, "You may play, you may not play, but bring your bass anyway."
Okay.
That was how I walked into the session, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And in retrospect, I realized now that Martin Luther King had just been killed 11 days prior to that.
Oh, wow.
The studio was full of people. I went to the control room because I wasn't scheduled to really play, just be there to observe the session.
Right.
And they started at 10 o'clock. They were already in the session. And from the first time she played the introduction, I said, oh yeah, cool. But the rest of the band didn't get it. Say between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., they were doing all kinds of stuff to make this record. And I'm sitting there like in agony, basically.
Yes,
my friend Paul Martinez, he was with me. I said, I'm going to observe, so I bring him to hang out with me. And so I sat there for 3 hours and watched them try to make sense out of what she was doing.
Right.
And I heard it immediately when she was playing what it should have been.
Right.
And of course I was here to observe, but I'm not that much outgoing, so I wasn't about to say anything.
Right.
And so at 2 o'clock, Jerry Wexler said, go in there and see what you can do.
Nice.
And that's how Think was created.
Absolutely.
And she played that badass introduction.
Yeah.
And then I heard the line, the pickup, which is a jazz.
Right.
I played that after she played that there was that break.
Yeah.
And I hit that break and then went to the country.
Right.
I was playing basically.
Exactly.
these guys were from the country.
Yeah.
They're from Alabama. I mean, you should know this stuff, but they wanted to make it. They were so used to making things something else, but they had made her 7 previous hits.
Right.
The same band.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of respect for them. Tommy Cogbill, great bassist. I mean, he worked with Wilson Pickett.
Yeah.
Engine number 9, 99 and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Tommy.
Yeah.
But he, it wasn't happening.
But that can happen. I've seen it happen many times in the studio where you've got a great player, but they just don't get that tune. They just don't get that thing.
Exactly.
But I think also, I would guess that you would say that your wide experience of so many different styles allowed you to make those choices.
Yeah, I heard it right away. Yeah, it's always like I say, it's about the music.
Yes.
I don't care what style it is.
No.
What tempo it is. It's about the music and what you're trying to say. She was talking about freedom.
Yes.
Think about it. I'm hearing these lyrics while it's for 3 hours now. While making sense of it, and then that's supporting what she's saying.
Yeah.
And my thing is about supporting the vocal, the message. You get the message out.
Sure.
So I had basically I knew what it's supposed to be, and you want something aggressive. You want something strong and aggressive behind what you're trying to say. And they were playing making some kind of slick rhythm and blues kind of sound and thing. It just wasn't happening. Yeah. And it was really simple. 2 takes, we were out. Yeah. And I got up to leave, and Tommy said, "Stay here." But he jumped on the guitar and started playing guitar.
Right.
I call it bebop country, bluegrass, because that's what he was playing. It was fast, it was land, incredible. I mean, we just came together with so much. That was magic. Yeah, that was truly magic, because they had been suffering with the song for 3 hours, and it wasn't happening.
But one of the things that I say to students think, well, it's all about coming up with something from the spirit, No, it's those years of experience of playing all these different styles. You knew Latin, you knew country, you knew classical, and all of that came together to put in your mind the exact line that you should have played. So, if I put it all together, it spells mother. Right. Yeah. And so that's really fascinating to hear about that session. And of course, there are thousands of others I'd like to talk about. But tell me this: were you ever on a session where you just thought, "I absolutely don't know what to do on this tune"?
Oh yeah, it can happen. It can happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just like but sometimes you find a way. You listen, you dig deeper.
Right. Sure.
You dig deeper into what's going on that you can do to make. The idea is to make a hit record. When I go in to record something, I know I'm going to make history. You're making a record.
Yes.
And it's a privilege to be able to be heard. I mean, so many musicians who are great, fantastic, never get heard.
That's right.
Unless they're except in a live context, which is only limited to the audience there.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the opportunities I've had to do that. Although, to tell you the truth, Richard, I never really wanted to be heard. I never wanted to be in the spotlight. If that was the case, I would have played trumpet, like most of my friends were. Right. I wanted to be in the background, just playing the bass. Yeah. That's why that was my vision when I said I want to do that.
Sure.
I saw myself in the back of the band, standing up, playing the bass, which I could hardly hear. I didn't realize my hearing was that bad. That's why I couldn't hear it. Right. But I had to really listen hard for it. Yeah. Well, I say, I have to listen that hard. Maybe I can get away with playing and not being so scrutinized in that position. So that's why I chose the bass. As a result of that, as a result of my inability to kind of focus and hear things and still be engaged, because I like what Paul had done with the music. He was so hip. How we make the music just jump up and little subtle things he would do. I said, I want to do that. But to be able to do it, to want to do it and to be able to do it is two different things.
Of course.
But it came to me kind of naturally to find out where to pick the spots to do these little extra things and the importance of it.
The harder you work, the better you got.
Oh, and the easier it gets. I mean, it's hard when you don't know. Mm-hmm. It's so hard.
I remember talking to Jerry Wexler about how much he loved working, of course, first with the Stax Band. He had never, because he had always worked in New York, and he always saw sessions where there was a chart, guy would have everybody read the chart, go home, have lunch. But he said, when I came down to Stax, there were these four guys. They hung up their jackets, and
I love that part.
Yeah, I love that.
That's what I, yeah.
And he said, and they just had these little, chords written out on a piece of toilet paper, and that was it. And they didn't even talk about chords; they just talked in numbers. And then he said, and then when I moved to Muscle Shoals, it was even more like that. And he called it collective arranging, which I've seen, of course, throughout my life. And obviously, I write out parts, but a lot of times I've been in the studio in places where nothing's written out, and everybody has to just pitch in and say, okay.
Make some music.
Yeah, and he said, like, for instance, on the I Never Loved a Man session, that Spooner Oldham was the guy who really gave a lot of ideas of what it was all about. Can you tell me a little bit about working with that Muscle Shoals outfit?
Yeah, it was cool. You mentioned Spooner. He's one of my favorite people from that time. He's me and him are the only ones left. Everybody else is gone.
Wow.
I spoke to Spooner, I know last year. I spoke a few times since Aretha's passed away, because they were calling both of us to do, mostly him, to talk about whatever they had to do.
Sure.
In terms of historical context. But working with Spooner in New York was one thing, and then he was on some of the sessions I did in Muscle Shoals, I believe. It was the same band, basically. We were basically following Aretha with that band.
Right.
We would follow her lead.
Yes.
And when I worked with that same band in Muscle Shoals, it was always that collective thing happening.
Right.
That we did the traditional thing, and no music. We make our own charts if we needed a chart.
Yes. Well, we all have great sessions, and we all have sessions where we think, don't tell anybody I was here. Leave me. So tell me, did you ever have the session?
I'm sure I've had my stumbles. I know I've had to have had.
I'm not saying your stumbles, but you walk into a place and it's like, the night of the living dead,
Well, I've walked into some strange circumstances, and I've had to, especially in the early days. I mean, with Wilson Pickett, in fact, Aretha called me because the bass player didn't show up.
Oh, right.
He calls me at 10:30. The session starts at 10.
Yeah.
He says, Jerry, can you come down? The guy didn't show up, whoever it was. I said, yeah, I can be there.
Yeah.
And he says, it's just one tune. I get there, and there's 25 people waiting for the bass part. They already know the music,
Yeah.
So I got to be on point to play it.
Yeah.
That was basically the challenge for me, to be able to deal with the pressure of the session.
Right.
And that one gave me a lot of confidence to really pursue it, because I could do that. That gave me the word out that I can do things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what year that was in. It's almost before. It was probably before Aretha.
But that's why they called you, because Aretha, I can tell from talking to him, he would say, I got to get the guy who can save this thing. It's going to be Jerry.
Well, he called me, and I did Deborah. It was a big hit for Wilson in Europe, which made the whole thing, Rhythm and Blues in Europe thing, come really alive with that, because he performed at the. They had to have it ready for the special festival. We did it on Monday. It was released on Friday. He had to take it to Europe and play it at the festival with the track, where he sang it with another Italian singer.
Right.
It's quite a rush of convergence of the necessity and the need to get it done really quick.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And we got it done. And Ken Curtis was like that.
Wow.
He'd hear something on the radio. He said, okay, we're going to record this. And we'd be in the studio the next day, and it'll be out on Friday.
Yeah,
It was that quick turnaround.
Yeah.
He had that kind of clout.
Yeah. And you didn't just work down there, you worked all over the country, right? I mean, because
basically New York and Muscle Shoals, and that was me and Dwayne did the Muscle Shoals. Every time I went to Muscle Shoals, Dwayne was with me. He'd fly in. Well, we want to say he'd come in from Georgia or wherever he was. Sometimes he'd go back to New York, but he was on all those sessions.
Right, right.
In fact, that's when he started the band, after leaving one of those sessions, because we were always kind of we really didn't want to do them because we knew that the guys weren't getting paid properly. Ooh. Yeah, and we kind of felt bad about that. Finally we said, this the vibe. The music was good, but the vibe of having to create music as a group, and somebody's getting paid less than you are, and and they're working their ass off for peanuts, and you're making all this money. We both felt kind of not comfortable with it.
No.
And so finally, we both, at the last session we did together, I think it was a Pickett session. We did Hey Jude. I
Right.
think that was the session. I said, I'm not doing this no more. He said,
Right.
me either.
Right.
I said, what you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna go up and I told him I'm gonna go to New York, go back home,
Right.
and tell Radio Registry, who books my job,
Sure, yeah.
don't book me, no more, just give me jingles and movies. I'm this head picking stuff. I don't
Yeah.
want to do it in New York either.
No.
Okay?
No.
Because you're not getting paid properly. You're not getting paid properly as an arranger, because people that arrange things would get paid
Right,
properly.
right.
And the vibe down there was kind of funny. So I decided to do that. And I said, what you going to do, brother? He said, well, I'm going to go home and start a band with my brother.
Right. But in New York, didn't they have to pay? I mean, if they booked a session, didn't they have to pay the union? And then you got
No,
the
not
money
necessarily.
from the union?
I did a lot of cash dates.
Oh, I see.
Did a lot of cash dates, and that's to my detriment because my pension goes down because of that. Because it goes to the pension, you goes to
Right,
the pension.
sure,
But
sure, yeah.
then a lot of those cash dates, they wouldn't. They pay you in cash.
Yeah.
And then some of the union dates, they pay you they take 3 months, like the roulette records.
Yeah.
They take you they give them 3 or 4 months to pay you.
Oh, I know. And forgive me for asking such breadhead questions, guys, but I always do ask these questions because I think people don't realize how difficult it is even for successful musicians to make a living.
Yeah,
and what you have to go through.
You put the time in, then you don't get paid for it for 3 months later?
Yeah,
You kidding?
exactly.
That was Sonny Lester. Anyway, I did a lot of organ. I played with every organ player.
Yeah.
McGriff, McDuff, Charles Erlin.
Oh, right, sure.
I worked with all of them with
Yeah.
doing these sets for Roulette Records and Blue Note.
Right.
And he was a producer, and we never get paid properly. And so it's always like, you take these cash gigs, you get paid right away. So
Oh, I see.
that was the lure of getting
I
the cash
see that.
gig.
And jingles were usually cash?
No, jingles were always through the union.
But at least you got paid because it was an ad agency or something.
Yeah,
like that.
we got paid. We got the residuals.
And in Muscle Shoals, did you get paid through the studio or what?
No, cash.
Oh, I see.
That was
Okay.
cash also.
All right, well,
Yeah.
it's better than a kick in the head. With
Yeah, I
a
get a
white
check
horse.
from, right, I go, Barbara Harris right out the check, sign to get the check. She called up and say, come pick up your check,
Right.
That's how it worked.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, because I would love to hear it explained from the horse's mouth. The color thing. Just explain a little bit about how the color thing works.
Came out and worked with Laura Nero.
Okay, great.
Herb and I were on a session with Laura. We do sessions with her.
Yeah.
And she would say, can you put a little green on that? A
Yes.
little pink on that?
I've heard that
blue?"
she always talked in color.
She talked in colors. And so 20 years later, 30 years later, I'm talking to her, we're reminiscing about stuff, and I'm showing him my brand new music book about this music and everyone that I had written. We're using the number system that Jerry West referred to.
Yes.
That they use all the time. No notes, no chord names, just the numbers.
Right.
Using that system basically. And I did the whole learning system. I still use it. I mean, it's my go-to.
Sure.
For teaching, learning, I learned the monk tune the other day.
Yeah.
Using that system. So he said, can you teach, your system using colors? I said, well, yeah, why not?
Why not?
And so he said, go ahead and go for it. I don't want to really be involved in it, but just, take a crack at it. Well, here we are 22 years later.
Yeah.
I finally got something that I can show people, basically.
Yeah. And so the basic idea for my Radio Richard listeners, the basic idea is that each note and each key has a sort of color hue. Is that the idea?
Well, each note has a certain key. Well, originally, people look at the color sound music as what Pythagoras came up with.
Okay.
And he only used the rainbow colors,
Okay.
which are 7,
Right.
which equate to all the keys all the notes in one key.
Yes.
Leaving out the octave.
Right.
And they ironically are only the keys in the key of C, the notes in the key of C,
Right.
which correspond to all the white keys on the piano.
Right.
Okay. So what I did, I added the black keys,
Yes.
which are the accidentals. So instead
Sure.
of C sharp, D flat, we have brown.
Right.
Instead of, did I say brown?
I think you did.
Yeah, C sharp, D flat. No,
Right.
we have brown. Okay.
Yeah.
D sharp, E flat, we have gold.
Right. I see.
Okay. F sharp, G flat, we have turquoise.
Yes.
G sharp, A flat, we have silver.
Right.
And A sharp, B flat, we have pink. As we did play the blues.
We played the pink blues.
So that's basically how it works. Every note has a color as opposed to just the white keys, which are the rainbow colors.
Right.
So I chose those colors because this what we see on Earth.
Right.
What we actually live with.
Yes.
Silver, gray. We live with black. We live with white. And if a note gets so dark, so low in turn,
right,
in pitch, it turns black.
Right.
So you can have a black in every 12 keys.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So high, it turns white.
Oh, I
You
see.
have
So
white.
different octaves have a different intensity.
Exactly.
I see.
Exactly. But the human eye, ironically, can only pick up so much. So to make it simple, I've made it so like what you're seeing, like each octave is actually, each color is actually 2 octaves.
Wow.
That's why I had to make it usable.
Right.
Because it became too convoluted with even for every 10 octaves you have a different hue. But once you see one red, you can imagine, it's about the imagination.
Right.
You can imagine what any shade of red you want.
Right.
Not the red's in your song.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the red that's there. It could be the red that you can imagine because it's really about perception.
Sure, sure.
So that's what the system
That's
basically
great.
does.
And the book is called?
The book is called Jamboree.
Okay, good.
That's
Okay, so if you want to get into the colors, Jamboree.
Yeah. But if you can forget the book, I've gotten to the point now where you put things in a book, people don't read books.
Okay.
It gets lost. It gets buried. So I have an app that I'm creating. We have it so you can actually see the colors and hear a note.
Yes.
And from there we want to get software so you can actually do things with it.
Right.
What the human would actually do if he's inclined to. Like you see like red, you have a relationship with something red in your life or something you're seeing. And you can go from a whole story based upon red.
Right. Okay. Well, check it out. Find the app when it's ready, and that'll be great.
You can see the app now on solarenergy.org.
So there you go.
You can see the prototype.
And just below here, you'll see that I'm showing you that website address right here that you can check out.
It's a fun game you can play where you match color with whatever you're hearing. A song might have, like, as we know, like the key of G has F sharp in it.
It certainly does.
Okay.
It always has.
Exactly. So that's the key that you wouldn't normally see. That's what you wouldn't normally think of in color sound music. But now you're able to actualize everything that you actually ever heard into color.
Right, right. Okay. This is fantastic.
As a result.
And right now, why don't we have a few colors with Alex?
Okay.
Okay.
But this is my workout because it's hard to play.
Right.
And it's very challenging. I find things that are challenging for me to play. So
yeah. And I also notice that where where your finger actually hits the string is, you're not just touching it, man. You're actually giving it some garlic.
I am. This is my.
Yeah, well, there's that hand, but I'm talking about that.
Yeah.
You're really slamming it.
I play without an amp all the time, mostly. So I'm used to playing acoustically. That way I'm not disturbing anybody.
Yeah.
All those
I
considerations.
understand that. Yeah, sure.
So,
like Wes Montgomery playing with his thumb.
Really?
Yeah, that's why he played with his thumb, because he could practice all the time and it was quieter. If you play this, it's quieter than playing.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, well, I'm in the right direction.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
There we were.
It worked. We got it done.
Man. Jerry, I'm so grateful that we've been able to do this. And I can't wait till we have further interesting talks about interesting stuff.
Well, we certainly have a lot to talk about because look where the world is today. They need us.
Yes, I think so. I
They
agree
need
with
us.
you entirely.
Radio Dum Dum Radio. Oh, is that Richard Niles? Radio Richard, Radio Richard.
Radio Richard!